fat actually is. It's just, the question should be like, where the hell does fat go? We're trying to quote, kill fat or burn fat, but that's not really how it works actually. Our fat is actually amazing. It's one of the most important things that have made us the humans that we are today. Fat can be broken down into essentially 5 different categories at minimum. And a couple of these folks might have heard before, but we're gonna go even deeper. So the first type is subcutaneous fat. And subcutaneous fat is a type of white adipose tissue. This is the fat that's just below your skin. And so if you think about like fat on your arms or your thighs, your butt, you can also have some subcutaneous fat on your belly, but that's the stuff you can pinch. The type of fat is visceral fat. And it's also known as omentum fat. And omentum fat is the kind of deeper recesses of your abdominal cavity, right? So this is the fat that's really kind of around the organs, you know, kind of if you have a lot of visceral fat, putting stress on your pancreas and on your kidneys and just everything in your core. Yeah, this is the most dangerous type of fat. This is the fat that's most correlated with heart disease, with Alzheimer's, with type 2 diabetes. You know, it's just putting stress on your core, everything, which there's so much around there. So these are both still 2 types of white adipose tissue. These are storage fats. Okay, so your body's storing energy. Our fat is actually amazing. It's one of the most important things that have made us the humans that we are today, is our ability to store energy and to go back and utilize that energy. Our fat is programmed to do what we've taught it to do. It's just doing what it's programmed to do. It's very good at it though. And it can be a little bit clingy, you know, so you have to give the right messages, and that's part of the issue. But it's really an organ itself. It's an organ that has this interconnected communication. And being that it's an organ, it produces its own hormones, all right? So it's like producing more hormones that encourage more fat storage if it gets out of hand. It's just, the question should be like, where the hell does fat go? For us psychologically, in our culture, we tend to think of burning fat. If there's a visual of it, it's sweating.
Yeah.
Like we're at the gym, we're sweating it out. That's your fat cells crying. But in actuality, about 84% of the fat that you lose or that you expel from your body is through breathing. It's an eliminatory organ, you know? We don't think about that. Your lungs. And so you breathe, about 84% of the fat that you lose comes out via your breath. Your breathing, it's all the metabolic processes that take place to create the metabolic kind of offshoot. You also do eliminate some of body fat through fluids. So about, you know, somewhere around the ballpark of about 15%, 16 to 14% sweat, and urine, tears. You can all of these things are eliminating
fat
products. We're trying to quote, kill fat or burn fat, but that's not really how it works actually. Your fat cells are storage containers, and what they're getting filled with, the fat cells, basically when you're born, you have a certain allotment of fat cells, all right? You can't just indiscriminately kill them. They get filled with more and more energy. It makes the fat cell expand. So what we're trying to do is to get the fat cell to let go of its contents so it can be used as fuel. There are 2 enzymes that are really the head ushers that push the fat contents or triglycerides into the fat cell, or they usher them out when it's time to leave. You know, namely your pancreas is like the mother of 2 brothers who have 2 different roles. One of them is insulin, and the other one, its brother, is glucagon. All right, insulin is so important for our survival. You absolutely have to have insulin. And if you're born, you know, in a condition where you have type 1 diabetes and the beta cells in your pancreas aren't even making insulin, like you can die. Your cells won't get energy. So now here's the thing. Insulin's job is to store energy. So when it's out of hand, when insulin is too active, it can be a problem. You can get to a point where there's so much activity with insulin, it's getting overrun and stressed out that it stops doing its job properly. That's where you get insulin resistance. So you got insulin doing its job of fat storage or energy storage. Glucagon does the opposite. It encourages your cells to let go of their contents to be used as energy. But glucagon cannot do its job unless his brother sits his ass down somewhere. Now here's another thing. We do know that, as you mentioned, sugar is a big driver of insulin, carbohydrates in general, but protein does as well. It incites the activity of insulin at a lesser degree for sure, and even fat in a kind of backdoor way. does drive insulin function too, or even contributes to potentially insulin sensitivity or insulin resistance. So it's not just this one thing, but we do know that in our culture, you know, on average, folks are eating like 150 pounds of sugar a year, you know, so that abnormal amount of exposure is chronically creating this overactivity of insulin to the point that we have insulin resistance. That's the misnomer though. We're not necessarily living longer, we're dying longer. And this is the first generation. We are the first generation right now that is going to not outlive our generations before us, right? This is the first time we're seeing this downtick. When we're supposed to be seeing folks, well, basically the life expectancy has gone down for the first time. So we'll just say the life expectancy of the past generation was 80 years old. Now it's 79. We don't just want lifespan, we want health span. And it all really boils down, and this is the most beautiful part about this, and what I'm really hoping to impress upon culture, because when we tend to think of food, we tend to think of it in relationship. In our culture, we think of diet in relationship to weight. It's just like what's connected. When in reality, food is one of the greatest, if not the greatest determinant of what every single cell and organ system in your body is doing at all times. And so brown adipose tissue is very dense in mitochondria, right? So these energy power plants, that's why it's brown. Babies have a lot of brown fat. It's kind of an evolutionary adaptation advantage to prevent hypothermia. As you become an adult, you have a lot less brown adipose tissue. It's mostly located like around your collarbones, your shoulder blades, down your spine. And brown adipose tissue is remarkable in that it's really correlated. If you have enough brown adipose tissue, which you can create more, and the mobilization and activity of it is correlated with having a better body composition. So this type of fat is burning fat for you. And so beige fat is really, really remarkable in that it can actually become brown fat or white fat, all right? Based on your lifestyle inputs and your nutrition can determine whether it's gonna be turning into a fat storing type of fat or a fat burning type of fat. Coffee has been found to encourage your beige fat cells to become brown fat cells. And in fact, one of the studies that I cited in Eat Smarter found they actually used fMRI, and they looked at what was happening in the body when somebody drank coffee, and they saw the brown fat areas of the body actually light up, signaling increased thermogenesis. And one of the studies found that there's about a 3 to 11% increase in metabolic rate from having caffeine. Now, there's a U-shaped curve of benefits. So there's a big conversation there, and we dive into all these pieces to see like, there's so many wonderful things that we have access to, but in our culture, we've been a little bit led astray. And it's not that coffee is inherently good or bad. It's been utilized by humans for centuries, but it's the quality and how you're going about it that can make all the difference.